Hi everyone, I'm Dale Smith, aka Journo Dale, and we're here to talk about Canadian politics. This past week, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has been threatening to make MPs sit through Christmas unless he gets what he wants, which is the government to lift the federal carbon price. The problem with this particular threat is that it is entirely empty. He has no actual mechanism by which he can force this to happen. He threatened this to happen last June and said, we're going to make you sit into July. And again, it was the same empty threat. They rose 2 days before the official last sitting day on the calendar, like they do every year. And he's made this threat again at Christmas, where he again has no mechanism to do so. They did force a vote-a-thon around the final estimates, which they have the power to do because they structured it so that they made amendments to each of these different line items within the estimates, which is the opposition's prerogative to do. They made them vote for 30 hours. They lost all of their amendment votes. The government passed their supply estimates, meaning those are the actual allocations for money for various departments. The government got those all through, even if they had to, sit through the discomfort of voting for 30 straight hours to do so. And Poilievre basically wasted everyone's time, but then tried to call it a victory for some strange reason because he was really showing the government somehow. Anyway, but I figured I would take a moment just to point out why this particular threat is so impotent. And that would be to go to the standing orders of the House of Commons. And if you look at Standing Order 28, there is a section in there talking about the House calendar. Now, the thing with the House of Commons, unlike the Senate, is that the House of Commons has a fixed calendar, which means it has fixed days on when it sits and when it doesn't. And changing those fixed dates requires unanimous consent motions. So in terms of the Christmas break, it says in here on Standing Order 28-2A, when the House of Commons meets on a day or sits on the normal meeting day or meeting hour on a day set out in column A, and then it adjourns, it shall stand adjourned to the day setting out in column B, except for certain exceptions. And the second Friday preceding Christmas is right there. That means that it is a fixed date in the standing orders for the House of Commons, that is when they rise for the Christmas break, and the corresponding date in column B for when they return is the last Monday in January. MPs long ago decided that was going to be how they were going to organize the calendar so that you couldn't have people trying to play games with it like Poilievre is threatening to do, but he really can't. Just like in June, the Friday preceding the week marking the midway, June 23rd or the Friday preceding if June 23rd falls on a Saturday, a Sunday, or a Monday. So June 23rd is always when they rise for the summer because it also has to do with Saint Jean Baptiste and National Indigenous Persons Day and then Canada Day. So they want people to be in the ridings for those. So June 23rd being the latest date before all of those days start to happen. And then they don't recall until the second Monday following Labor Day. So that is the fixed calendar. And the only way Poilievre could force MPs to sit for longer would be to pass a unanimous consent motion, which he's never going to get. The other thing I find is particularly curious about this threat is that, oh no, he would let the government get more of their agenda through. As far as the threat goes, that's not a really bad one. One of the actual problems with the government's being able to get through its agenda in Parliament is that it only has so much time to do so. I mean, we've got a fixed calendar, and time is pretty finite in the parliamentary calendar. And that's why, there's stuff that just never seems to get through, is because there's not enough time to get it through when you've got all these other priorities to happen. And the other thing is that if he did somehow force the House of Commons to extend its sitting, there are no more extra supply days for him to dominate the agenda. Supply days also being known as opposition days, where the opposition has the opportunity to set the agenda for those days. There's a fixed number of those through the supply cycle, and we've just used the last of them. That was their final supply day on the day that they voted on the estimates that they started the vote-a-thon. So there are no more supply days for him or the Conservatives to try and dominate the agenda on those days. So you would actually just have days that were entirely government programmed, so that they could actually get more of their bills debated and more of their motions through. Again, I'm not seeing the downside for the government if they were to somehow force them to sit longer. Yes, they'd be crabby because they couldn't be with their families or attending constituency events, but neither would Conservative MPs. And they also have obligations with families and riding events throughout the season. So again, it seems like they're just more punishing themselves than they are the government. If they figure that if they somehow extend the sittings that they could use enough procedural games to make the government waste more time. Again, you're in bonus time at this point, so anytime the government gets to complete any more business is gravy for them. But also, the Bloc and the NDP could just as easily play ball and let the government not get their business through without acceding to dilatory motions. So again, not seeing what the actual threat here is for the government. So anyway, yeah, I just figured we'd have a quick chat. These are why these threats don't actually count as threats, why they're not actually going to follow through on them, and also why my fellow reporters should probably stop taking these threats so credulously, because there is no way that he can force any of them. So he's already done the worst he could, which was the vote-a-thon. The House will rise next week, probably on the Wednesday or the Thursday, because that's when everyone is going to be crabby enough to want to be home as soon as possible. MPs are going to be feral as it is in the next week because they're already overtired. And this vote-a-thon didn't make things any better. So MPs will enjoy the holidays as they were scheduled to. Nothing Pierre Poilievre can do will change that fact. And we need to stop believing him when he says he can act on these threats, because he can't. And that's everything for this week. Join us again next week for some more Canadian politics. I'm Dale Smith. That's at journo_Dale on Twitter and journodale __ on Bluesky. And don't forget to like the video, share, subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Thanks, everyone.